G'day YouTube, welcome to Biennale of Sydney 2010. I've just looked at my first step of the Biennale of Sydney. Behind me here is the old gunnery, which is Artspace, here near the wharf of Woolloomooloo. So what did I see here in Artspace? Marcus Coates, who is doing some work on the redevelopment of Elephant and Castle. So it was like a commentary on an environmental redevelopment on space and sites and people and places, which is what I had to do in my first thesis in art college. And what he did was he made himself a character. One of them was he had a rock band kind of thing, had a stuffed horse's head on his head, and I first saw it when I saw that in the multimedia of the rock band, and there he was with a stuffed horse's head on him. I just thought that was absolutely ridiculous. But then I just listened to it, and I know that sometimes with multimedia works, especially with expressions of environment, you really have to work hard in sifting through to actually get to the point of what they're actually trying to say, because when you first look at it, it looks like a wank. Started this journey into Coates's work, and he had about 3 or 4 screens. They gave him a fair bit of space at Artspace, and he went through Elephant and Castle, he's not from Elephant and Castle, so from an outsider's perspective, from a neutral perspective, dressed up in a silver suit and always with a stuffed animal, sometimes with a stuffed eagle up on like an umbrella. He always had stuffed animals around him for some reason, and had these seminars with the council. I think it's called Suffolk. Is it Suffolk Council? Kensington 25? Anyway, whoever's councils, Elephant Castle, who obviously were not listening to the residents of the area. They weren't listening to what people wanted, and you could hear from the vox populi of the video what people thought of themselves in the area. It was completely different to what the redevelopers had in mind, which was quite an absurd situation, one that I can relate to in Sydney. We have a similar situation with our council in Sydney, which has a completely different idea of redeveloping our city to what us residents would like to see in Sydney. And Elephant Castle seems to be having a similar thing. Ironic, maybe this is what Biennale is looking at. Something seems to resonate here in Sydney when a council just simply refuses to listen to the people that voted them. So I give it merit for that, and going into a council meeting with a stuffed owl, and went through a seminar where they had to close their eyes and meditate, and they were taking all terribly seriously, but he was really taking the piss out of them. And very clever in how he just somehow made them total fools of themselves, where they recognised that you cannot completely redevelop an area and expect an area to improve or change. Where do you expect it to go? They had no idea where they expected it to go. I had a similar argument with the Sydney Council when they redeveloped Taylor Square, and I had a similar firewall. I didn't have the power that Coates had, or the reputation, but I know that councils just don't listen to people, even if you do have arts degrees and things like that. They just don't listen. So it was very clever how he confronted them. Another artist, Lara Baladi, who had a beautiful, huge mural, the Garden of Allah. I have to be reminded because I have a terrible memory, but it was absolutely striking mural, huge. A bit of absurdity, a bit of comedy, a bit of irony, and this huge depiction of how a person could see a Garden of Allah, not what you would expect. One of the characters, a woman who had man's hands, a peacock. There were strange looking people who we assume were virgins in the Garden of Allah, as Islamic men would expect paradise. It's quite, and the paradise that she painted as a huge mural was probably not quite what they expect at all. But it's sort of, in the lushness at first sight, looks like paradise, but is not what it seems. That was quite clever, quite subversive. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. A Russian Chto Delat looked in Russia at the Perestroika period of how the Soviet artists were trying to reform how artists were creating things in Russia, former Soviet Union, in that time period, and they were pretty much taking the piss out of the Soviet way of doing things, the Russian way of doing things, the dogmas, the nationalism, the bitterness, recreate a new way of being open and creative, which you really had to look to see the irony of it. You had to look hard to see that. There were some other works. There are performance arts there. I haven't looked at the performances yet at Artspace. It's going for another few weeks. It's going into the end of this month and into next month. So tomorrow I'm hoping to go to Pictou Island, which is an island in the harbour, haunted as buggery. It's supposed to be very, very haunted. It was a former insane asylum, jewel in the crown of the Biennale. I have to catch a ferry to go there to Pictou Island, and it's covered with multimedia art. So I'll see you there.
Oh, when the same is on you do. Oh, when the same is on you do. Oh, and I wanna be a scholar.